to stay if you like. Okay, I will share here, Vikram. I will share here a PowerPoint. Okay.
Well,
One second.
will I get an opportunity to thank you for being part of the symposium? So, Malu, thank you for being part of the symposium, and of course, looking forward to your.
I thank you for the invitation. This is a great pleasure for me for being here, and this is an honor, right? And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank
This
you very
is
much.
very nice.
But before you share your screen, I'll have to just run 30 seconds, mediatorvikram.com to find information, because every session goes out separately. So I just have to put it out there. Information about some activities and all, connect on social media, support, World Mediation Circle, all that is here. I won't take more of your time because you have only half an hour, and I know half an hour is not going to be enough for you. So please, Malu, all yours.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can you see here?
Almost. It's just, yes, now it's up, but you'll have to just start the slideshow, because then we'll be able to read the whole thing.
Right, okay. So I will start by saying who I am. I graduated from law school in the Universidade de São Paulo. I am a lawyer myself. I was talking about lawyers, but I'm a lawyer myself. But I spent the great part of my life as a teacher, as a professor. I teach commercial law the most part of my life, and I have masters, and I have a PhD, and I work as a conciliator and a mediator for more than 7 years now. Well, I will talk about strengthening democracy, weakening armed conflict. I will talk about the war in Ukraine.
But you will, Malu, connect it to language and mediation also? It's going to be all connected to language and mediation?
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
Yes. My inspiration is a paper, is a work written by Professor Ken Cloke. He wrote a paper that named "The War in Ukraine: Lessons for Mediators." Okay, so. Dictatorship is a regime of government whose power is concentrated in the hands of one group or one leader. The state is quite intense in the lives of citizens. Elections are not transparent, and there is no freedom of the press. The rules imposed by the dictatorship regime are not questioned, but rather obeyed. Dictatorships can be left-wing, right-wing, or military. The heart of the matter is, where democracy is lacking, there is a lack of dialogue, opacity of decisions, and the presence of censorship. For mediation to be effective in the current conflicts of humanity, the democratic rule of law must be strengthened. The United Nations. After the devastation of the Second World War, the United Nations was created with the main mission of maintaining international peace and security. For this purpose, United Nations is composed by Security Council and General Assembly. United Nations also accomplished this mission by working to prevent conflict through prevent diplomacy and mediation activities. This is the central issue of this work. In a simplistic way, we can say that there are different ways of dealing with conflicts, and the way to solve them depends a lot on the characteristic of the other party. Totalitarian regimes manipulate the thinking of society. The use of language controlled are controlled, and the media is censored. Prioritizing the prevention. Even when negotiation with autocratic and intimidating regimes, mediators could end wars in advance by prioritizing the prevention. Training civil society actors and organizers and organizations is a good example. For instance, Rotary is the only civil organization that has a permanent seat in the United Nations. Mediators of all levels of expertise from all nationalities are welcome to contribute in many ways in order to prevent future wars. For example, strengthening the United Nations, participating actively in international mediation and peace-building organizations. Mediation is therefore fundamental to deal with conflicts as well as new ways of diplomacy. The war in Ukraine, a turning point. Almost 1 year after the invasion of Ukrainian territory by Russian military force, the end of this conflict is still far from being achieved. As we have been speaking, Russia is led by an autocratic regime which is very difficult to surrender to dialogue, and its language strategy is the inversion of the logic. I have some examples I will tell after, okay? Well, Vladimir Putin has been claiming that the meaning of the special military operation in Ukraine is to protect people living in historically Russian territories. According to Vladimir Putin, he has been trying for a long time to negotiate a peaceful way out of the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine, where Ukrainian separatists live. United States versus Russia. According to Sergei Lavrov, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, the war in Ukraine is a consequence of the US foreign policy against Russia, which had been forced to invade Ukraine territory due to the West's unacceptable support for Kiev. Lavrov concluded his reasoning by saying that his country was forced to invade Ukraine due to what he called the West hybrid war against Russia. What is happening now in Ukraine is the result of many years of preparation by the United States and its allies to launch a global hybrid war against the Russian Federation. Putin echoes his opinion when he says that Zelensky is prevented from reaching the negotiating table by the West. Israel. As a traditionally neutral country in the global geopolitical scenario, although allied with the United States and diplomatically well connected with Russia, Israel would be the ideal place for an eventual meeting of diplomats and mediators in order to try to put an end to the conflict, which brings so much suffering to many people, brings so much suffering to families as well as putting the workplace at risk. This armed conflict has disastrous consequences, not only for Ukraine, but for the entire European community, and even for Brazil, which imports and exports commodities as it is part of the BRICS. Davos, World Economic Forum in Davos. NATO, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is in an interview for Reuters at the World Economic Forum in Davos, said that supporting Ukraine with a significant increase in arms is the only way to reach a peaceful negotiated solution. He said, if we want a peaceful negotiated solution tomorrow, we need to supply more weapons today. In the past 20th of January, around 50 leaders of NATO's member countries have met at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany to talk about the escalation of this conflict. So, conclusion. Then we will go for examples. I will talk about this paper of Professor Kenneth, okay? So, no one could possibly disagree with the wise words of Mr. Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, reiterating that February 24 Russian invasion violated international law and the United Nations Charter. The Secretary General underscored the difficulty of ending the violence when the two sides continue to have two different ideas about what the Russian Empire was, what the nationalities were. He added, this makes it more difficult to find a solution, but that solution needs to be based on international law and needs to respect territorial integrity. I don't see conditions for that to happen in the immediate future. That is mediation and diplomacy. I am a strong believer that only mediation and diplomacy can end this conflict. And I could also agree with Mr. Guterres that this conflict is far from immediate future. According to Mr. Myers, in a brilliant article he wrote, let me set expectations for what a durable resolution will ultimately look like. No one will like it. Putin will not like, Biden will not like, Zelensky, NATO, the United European, no one, because no one can win or no one can lose. Some outcomes can be obvious, but there are also many complicated issues on the table. Large and small, all the issues can be identified, legitimized, sorted, and resolved. Only mediation can do that. The process is going to take many months and possibly years, but perhaps one of the most important outcomes of the process will be the beginning of a new beginning for Ukrainians and Russians. So, conclusion, only mediation will end the war in Ukraine. That's
Thank you.
the point.
Thank you, Malu. Although this was on 24th, we're having a discussion on mediators and the war in Ukraine. Actually, this would have been a good thing to take up there. Please come to that. The Zoom link remains the same. It's at 8:30 India time. So basically the same time today that you started your session, same time we'll start the discussion. I've called mediators from Russia and Ukraine and anyone else who's had an experience in relation to the war. So this can be taken up there, because mediation is a nice thing to say, but the fact is in mediation, you have to have all the stakeholders on the table to discuss whatever needs to be discussed. And are you going to get the arms industry on the table? Are they going to be part of the process? Will you get the peace industry on the table? Are they what do they have to say? So the problem is to get the right people. Only then can things happen. So I don't think are we ready to get all the stakeholders or not? What do you think, Malu? And then we'll ask Francis also.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's well, when it was Gorbachev, remember him, Gorbachev, unless someone like Gorbachev appears, then otherwise it's not going to end in a near future, as he says, because there are many interests involved, and Putin is that kind of person that I did it because of you, that he twists the responsibilities. I did it because you deserved it, you know. So the thing is, so if tomorrow, imagine a weird situation. Argentina thinks that their country is too small and they invade here Brazil. So this is a matter of international law. So this is, it has to like Mr. Guterres said, well, it has to put everybody on a table and see, look, what on earth entitled Mr. Putin to invade the neighbor, the Ukraine? And so
but Manu, you said but everybody. But the problem is, it all starts with who those everybody are. And once you don't get all the everybody's there, how do you move forward? And I'm not an international law person, but I find this all a joke. We talk about the United Nations and everything, and someone enters into some place and starts a war, and we're all watching it and talking about it, and it's all happening there. It's a joke. And then we talk about the Security Council. A country of 1.4 billion people are not represented in the Security Council. India is not in the Security Council. It all sounds like a joke to me. It's just a joke. That's a nice thing. Let them keep talking about it. They have their nice meetings in those nice buildings and everything. But the ground reality is someone else controls it. So totally someone else. It seems to be, because I don't think countries are in control of it. If they were, we might have had some change. So there are too many other factors there, and I think to get into
it's too complex. I understand what you mean. It's really too complex. But I mean, like Professor Cloke said, that mediators in every country and at all levels of expertise can contribute to ending this and future wars in thousands of ways. But before they start, because when a war started, it's like it's like an earthquake. It's very difficult to stop. So, and he gives here a lot of examples how we could avoid future wars. by supporting victims and refugees, by strengthening the United Nations, by continuing to listen and engage dialogues. And there is something that that he points here. It's very, very nice. That is really interesting about the kind of structure, orientation.
But he will also be joining the discussion on the 24th. He will also be joining the discussion. He will also be, Ken Cloke will also be there later. I mean, we'll start at 8:30 India time, but he'll come in a little later on that discussion. So you can also, we'll ask him to talk about what you just said.
So autocratic and democratic, and aggressive, accommodative. So resistance, encouragement to change. So that's the orientation. Countries that have this orientation, like Moscow, as of autocratic, is really difficult to dialogue. So that's difficult, but we can try. So
Malu, what I decided was, all this will keep happening. Let's go down, create that culture at the grassroots level in every community, every school, every family. So that's why this World Mediation Circle and mediation circles. I said, let's start there. There are certain basics which obviously remain the same. Would be in a community or at the world stage, some basics of people and what motivates them and what interests come in, they kind of remain the same, only it gets escalated to a different level. I mean, I'm simplifying it a little too much, maybe, but let's just go down there because that is in our control. On the other side is it become too huge an industry. First of all, the arms industry is too huge. There are so many other, the power and money aspect of it, which is on that side. So that will happen, I'm sure, but maybe we might not be able to do too much at this stage, but at least at the grassroots level, we can start that. So like I was telling Francis, that being a country of less than 300,000 people, I think it's good model. We'll make that into a dispute-free country. So then things can go. So Francis, what Malu said.
That is to settle the disputes. That would be great for our tourism, you know.
Yeah. Interestingly, we were talking about this, about a tourist mediation service. Every tourist faces issues, so there should be a helpline. You call that helpline, a mediator comes in and helps a tourist who's definitely might have a language issue and everything. So the culture kind of develops. Let's pick up wherever we can. So but Francis, what Malu said, anything on that? Anything that you want to comment on that?
No, that's okay.
No,
but
we're asking Francis. I was just asking Francis if she wants to.
Francis, would you like to?
The general thing is that there's several points of view about the Ukraine thing, which most of which I don't really want to go into, but you know, as a person of African descent, for example, I understand why culturally in the world today there are different strains of thought that are challenging some old assumptions about the world. Now, the statistics recently came out that said, not too far from now, India will be the most populous country in the world, not China, India, right? So Vikram is very right. How come India is not on the Security Council? And you have the formation of a set of group of countries getting together called the BRICS countries. You know something interesting about that group? There are different ideologies altogether. There's no one ideology in that group, but yet they find an common interest. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So to get back where I started, it's you know, the more I read about Africa and so on, the more I get the impression that a lot of information about that continent was suppressed, deliberately suppressed. And heaven knows what the world would have been like if it had not been suppressed. Okay, so we have this thing that appears to be insurmountable between Russia and Ukraine, and the West is involved, and so on and so forth. And the question is, well, you know, if there hadn't been a Soviet Union, heaven knows what would have happened there, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a Soviet Union, and there were agreements made at the time of the Soviet Union being dissolved, et cetera, et cetera. And this is part of the genesis of some of the thinking of the Putin side of things. So it's very difficult to, you know, if you listen to the Western media, you get a whole lot of stuff. But I remember one very important statement that I think my father taught me was the biggest, and he isn't the source of this statement, but it was a very important statement about any war. The biggest casualty in war is the truth. It's the biggest casualty of war is the truth, because both sides habitually lie to make it appear that they're winning. Both sides. And the question is, who is really telling the truth? So those would be my comments. It's not easy. I would not like to be in a position of a Guterres today, trying to lead that whole trust to try to get peace and so on. But peace, the problems elsewhere. You mentioned Israel, the Israel-Palestinian problem preceded Ukraine and Russia by decades, but all of a sudden it is on the second round. And there are various conflicts in Africa and other parts of Europe and in the Middle East that are not getting any attention. There is, you know, in Latin America and so on, that are not getting any attention. So I'm a bit, you know, I'm wondering, you know, what it is that we were being distracted from, that all of the attention is being given to Ukraine and Russia, because there are other things that are happening in this world that were happening long before Ukraine and Russia that are no longer getting any attention. So we have to be aware of these things. And I agree, however, that mediation has an important role to play in resolving these conflicts. But it means that the leaders have to accede to mediation and have to be willing to listen, etc., and have conversations.
But Francis, the whole idea, again, like, I'll go back to the World Mediation Circle and these circles, but of course we'll say hi to Gabriela. Hi, Gabriela.
Hi, Vikram. How are you? Hi,
Good.
everybody.
So, hi, Francis, Malu. Of course, you know where they are from because it's already written there. But the idea, Francis, the long-term idea is of the World Mediation Circle and identifying these mediators is that mediators as leaders and leaders as mediators. And then let's see, maybe some things can change. So that's what it is. There's some comments, Malu, on the fact, of course, Elyse likes my idea of the tourist helpline, mediator helpline.
Let's work on it.
And she says she stays next to Disneyland in Florida, and she thinks it's something that can be useful. Seriously, I'm telling you, it's an idea that can work, because that is something. Gabriela, my idea was that for tourists, there can be a mediation helpline. They have an issue with maybe their hotels or whatever, they just call that helpline and a mediator comes in, maybe on the phone, online or whatever, comes in and helps them resolve that.
Well, that's a good idea. Can work.
I put the comment out in Elyse's message that I'm finding all kinds of ways to get work for mediators because I want them to be practicing as full-time mediators. So that's what.
And we just can't give up. We just need to keep trying to like that song, like John Lennon song, Imagine.
And there's someone who's commenting who's a big fan of John Lennon and Imagine.
Yes.
Her comments on LinkedIn are nice, peaceful aspect. Dear Mali, she's called you Malibu instead of Malu. We got you Malibu. Mediation is peace for sure. Shall we have a war with war and win?
Yes.
Could find a win-win solution. mediation versus war, win-win resolution. So yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
So what we have to do is we have to go to Gavrila's session now because obviously it's a minute
Vikram, I
late.
will take my leave at this time.
Okay.
Malu, nice talking to you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Francis.
you.
Always
Thank
a
you.
pleasure having you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And please try and come for the last day on 21st.
Yes, I will do my best to be there.
And
Thank you.
24th, like I told you, 24th is that session on mediators and the war in Ukraine. So if you want to come in for that, please. Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Francis. Bye.
Francis, take
Bye
care.
bye. Bye bye.
Thank you. So, Malu, you're with us? I don't have to say bye to you right now, do I? Malu?
All right.
You're going?
I will say.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Nice to meet you. Bye bye.